Hey everybody, I'm going live a little early. My rig just decided to move on me. There we go. Let me go down a little bit. I moved my rig because it was on this side of me. It's now on the side of the table. It was right next to me on this side of the table. I decided to vlog a little bit early today. I do shipped for work and have had no orders. And I think it's because my last two orders were late, unfortunately. And so they decided, well, you don't deserve orders. Great. So I don't know if that's the case. That's just the way it feels right now. So I'll see if I can do some orders after we do our taxes tonight. Yay. Um, but I've had this idea on my mind for a little while now. I started seeing a new therapist few weeks ago, 2, 3 weeks ago, and being a therapist myself, there's some things that I always try and address in a new session. Like very first time I meet with someone, that I always really appreciate when a therapist does with me when I meet with them for the first time. So I just thought I'd kind of talk about it if there's anybody who's nervous about seeing a therapist. I know even being a social worker, being in the therapy realm, I'm always really nervous seeing a therapist because those subconscious thoughts of what if they judge me? What if they say I'm crazy? What if I really am as crazy as I feel? What are they going to do? Lock me up? Like those often irrational thoughts just kind of convalesce and take over. So I always try and remind myself of what happens during therapy when I do therapy. What am I thinking when I do therapy? And it's not judgment, it's usually a combination of, wow, this person is really brave for coming to see me. This is a lot they've been trying to deal with on their own. I'm impressed they've been dealing with it on their own this long. I wish they would have sought help earlier. It's usually the train of thought I have when I start seeing someone for therapy. But it's usually how strong they are. I always see people's resources and strengths over their weaknesses. It's one, how I've been trained, but two, that's just how I think. And I don't know if that's because of my social work training or if that's just my brain. Been in the social work realm for so long now. I don't know which came first. Um, so excuse me. I still have the stupid cough from the flu like 2 weeks ago. Hold on, let me grab my water. All right, that's a little better. So, for the very first session, either before you've come into the office or while you're waiting, you are probably going to fill out some sort of an assessment, a biopsychosocial assessment. And what that stands for is biological, psychological, and social assessment. So it's going to go over when's the last time you had a physical, a dental exam. Um, are you concerned about anything in your physical health? Are you getting enough sleep? Psychological part of it. Um, are you feeling depressed, tired, lonely? Do you feel like people are out to get you? Are you hearing voices? Um, are you feeling anxious? Are you having trouble stopping worrying? That's kind of the psychological part of it. And those aren't judgment questions, those are legitimate questions that they're asking because they need to know that in order to help you appropriately. And then the social aspect, do you feel supported? Do you have something that you enjoy doing? Are you working right now? Do you have transportation? So that biopsychosocial assessment is a way of getting that more rounded picture of what are you coming in with? Because you aren't a diagnosis, you aren't your mental health. You are a whole person with a lot of complicated issues, a lot of different things going on. And so that kind of helps the therapist gather a teeny bit of, okay, the person has a job, they have transportation, they've got a really good set of friends, but they still don't feel fulfilled. They hate their job, their marriage is in the pits, and they're in a huge financial debt despite having, quote unquote, earning enough money to make a living. Um, there's quite a few red flags in there if that's the individual that's being brought to me. What's going on? Are you doing shopping therapy? Where people buy things to make themselves feel better? Um, are you going out a lot? Are you never home? So you're spending a lot of money on eating out and going places because you don't want to be home with your partner. Things of that nature. That's where my mind goes when I see something like that. And they mention a few of those kind of triggers. So, um, that's just kind of giving you a little bit of insight, at least for me. I'm not speaking for every therapist. I'm not speaking for every social worker. I'm not speaking for every psychologist. I'm just speaking from my own personal experience as a social worker, as well as someone who has clinical depression and is in the system and has a therapist and is seeking assistance. So I'm trying to give you both sides of both the therapeutic side as well as the client side from my point of view, anyway. So, when I go into, I'll just use my example of I went to go see my therapist for the very first time. I filled out my biopsychosocial assessment online and sent it to her, but I didn't finish it in time for her to receive it before our appointment because I forgot about it, and I had received an email going, "Don't forget about filling out your assessment for your worker." I was like, "Oh, shoot, completely forgot about it." Completely slipped my mind that it was an online form. So, crap happens. So I'm filling it out, and I finished it shortly before I left to go see her. So she starts going through and asking some of the more pertinent questions of the assessment because she knows it's coming, um, but she hasn't received it yet through their pipeline. So she's sitting there on the computer, not looking at me, which is kind of a pet peeve for me. That really bothers me. When I'm talking at someone and I'm talking to someone, I want to look them in the eye. I want to see that they're paying attention, they're nodding, okay, they're acknowledging, and she wasn't doing a whole lot of that. Part of that also had to do with I was running a little late. So I think she felt very rushed. I know I felt very rushed of crap, this is our first session. We now have half of the time we normally would have had because I was late. I misunderstood the appointment. I thought it was supposed to be online. It was actually in person. Their system was very confusing. And then you come to someone with anxiety and depression who's already a little nervous about coming to a session, realizing they misunderstood the email, they didn't fill out everything on time, and I'm now running late to my very first session. Great start! Um, so it was really hectic and chaotic, and holy cow. But, that was my first session with my new therapist. She handled it pretty well. So she was very business oriented of, okay, I have to get a certain amount of information right now before we leave. So for the first about 10 minutes of our session, she sat with her side facing me, laptop on her lap, mouse on her desk. So you are me facing me, and this is her. And she's asking me questions. Every once in a while, she'll look at me, but she's just doing stuff on her computer. And so it was very disconcerting for me because I just kind of wanted to look at her and be like, can you at least look at me like a human being and not like a client, a number, or something you're accessing into the computer? But because of my therapeutic background, I knew what she was doing. She was trying to get the bare minimums of what she needed that day because most therapists have to put together a document after their very first session. So they have to put together an assessment that answers so many questions, and they have to complete this document whether they asked me all the questions or not. They have to complete this document after the first session with me. So I knew she was trying to get those questions answered really quickly so that we could then get on to, okay, let's have a conversation now, which is what we did for the last 10-15 minutes. um, so then after she kind of got most of the questions done, she turned to me, laptop still on her lap, but now she's looking at me. I'm actually looking at her in the face, and we're having a conversation. And every once in a while, she'll turn and she'll do something because her mouse was on her desk and laptop was on her lap. So she would turn and do something on her mouse and then her laptop, and then she'd look back up at me. Um, and I'm a very frank, forward, honest person. So I had no problem. She would ask me a question and I would just tell her. And we got into some heavy stuff. I've got a lot of heavy trauma in my past. Um, I've lost 2 jobs because of the clinical depression and some health issues. I had 3 surgeries in 2018. Um, and so talking about work and work loss is very, very hard for me. And so I just started to cry. Work loss is a trauma for a lot of people. And for me right now, that's a trauma. I can feel the tears welling up. So I'm going to move on. Um, and so we kind of hinted on that. And then she asked the very pertinent question, which I appreciated. What is bothering you the most right now? What walking into this office were you hoping to talk about? And she didn't say it exactly like that, but that was kind of the gist of it. And during your first session, I'm hoping a therapist will say something of that effect to you. I'm hoping they will say, what is going on for you right now, right at this very minute? Because in your first therapy session, you cannot do everything. And you've just reviewed everything. At least that's the way it feels. Because you've talked about all this different stuff, and they're going to bring up this really heavy stuff. Has this ever happened to you? Has this ever happened to you? What about this? And have you ever dealt with this before? And does this bother you? Um, and so there's just these big things that they bring up, and it's like, yes, yes, yes. No, I'm fine with that. Well, that happened, but I'm okay with it. Well, that happened. I'm still dealing with that. That's why I'm here. Um, so I'm hoping that if you go see a therapist with at least 15 minutes left on your session, they're going to say, so I know we've talked about a lot of stuff, and I can see that it's brought up a lot in you today, and I really appreciate you coming in today. But what I want to focus on for our last bit of time is, what is really weighing on you right now? What is going on? Like, is it your sleep? Is it the anxiety? Is it the repetitious thoughts? Like, what in the things that we just talked about, what is it that you really want to kind of briefly discuss today, and maybe see if we can find something that'll be helpful for when you walk out the door? And then it's your turn to talk. And then you guys are going to have a discussion. Some skills might be brought up. I know she gave me um, a worksheet to go over some, it's called DBT, Dialectical Behavioral Therapy, some skills where DBT is the concept of talking about learning to, excuse me, I just belched, not sure if you could hear that, learning to kind of rein in your emotional mind and your intellectual or rational mind, and create what's called a wise mind, kind of where those two intersect. And that is where you're not freaking out because someone cut you off at the intersection and they hate me and they know I'm a stupid idiot. Like, I've had those thoughts before, and it has nothing to do with me. They're probably just distracted, or they're having a really rough day and they feel really bad now, and or I don't even know. They're in another car. They're way down there. It's gone. It's done. So she gave me one of these worksheets for DBT, and I'm still reading. I got more in my second session, so I'm still reading through all of them. They're really good skills. It's just a matter of learning them, then knowing them, then putting them into practice. Because learning them to me is, okay, I've read it. Knowing them is, I don't need to look at the sheet. I know what they are. And then obviously using the skills. Three kind of different levels. The last one is always the hardest. Always the hardest. But so when you leave that day, hopefully you've set up your next appointment, you've got something scheduled, you've built some rapport, you've kind of decided, is this a good fit with my clinician? Hopefully they've not just sat there and asked you a question, type something up, ask you a question, ask you a question. Hopefully they've responded to a lot of the things you've said. They shouldn't just ask a question and type something up. Especially for a lot of those hard questions. If you say you've had a trauma, they should have an empathic reaction of, wow, that must have been really hard. I'm so glad you've made it through that to come to me today. I'm really impressed that you've come this far. That's a lot to handle. Whatever it is. They should be responding and guiding you and not just question answer. So I hope that's helpful. That was kind of all I was going to talk about today. I talked about a little more than I was planning on, like the DBT. But if you guys have any more like therapeutic questions, my mental health journey, my social work journey, let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear them. I'd be interested to see if I'm comfortable answering any of them. Because being a social worker, our private lives are very, very interesting because everything we do, we have to be very careful of. Sorry, I forgot to turn my phone on silent. Everything we do, we have to be careful of because we're always mandated reporters, things of that nature. So I'm always trying to be careful of HIPAA confidentiality. I don't talk about clients on here, but I don't know, my personal life, I don't want me sharing stuff because I'm kind of an open book. I don't mind sharing stuff, but I don't want it to interfere with my work. So we shall see what I'm comfortable sharing. But thank you so much for watching and getting through this almost 19-minute video. I didn't mean for it to be that long. I am a rambler. I'm working on it. As hopefully as I make more videos, this will get a little more reined in. So I hope you're doing well and have a fabulous day.